It was a crisp morning in Washington, D.C. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the streets of the capital. A significant government event was scheduled to take place at the National Mall, a gathering that would attract some of the most influential figures in the nation. It was an event that had been planned for months, and everyone from members of Congress to key officials from the Trump administration was expected to attend. At the heart of this gathering was none other than Elon Musk, the senior advisor to President Donald Trump and the de facto head of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. A man who had revolutionized industries ranging from electric vehicles to space exploration. Musk had become a key player in the Trump administration's effort to streamline government operations and make the U.S. a leader in technological innovation. As Musk's black Tesla Model S cruised through the streets of D.C., he glanced at the clock on the dashboard. He was running a bit late, just a few minutes. He'd had a late-night meeting at the White House, finalizing plans for the upcoming event. The agenda was critical. This was to be the launch of an initiative that would change the way the government interacted with tech companies and entrepreneurs. It was Musk's brainchild, and he couldn't afford to be late. Pulling up to the entrance of the event venue, Musk noticed a few security guards standing by the entrance, along with several other high-ranking officials milling about. But something felt off. The usual hustle and bustle of such events was missing. The atmosphere felt tense, and as Musk rolled down his window to address the guard stationed at the front, he noticed something strange. The security guard seemed confused. "Excuse me, sir," the guard said, squinting at Musk. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you in." Musk raised an eyebrow, thinking the guard must have been mistaken. "I'm Elon Musk," he said smoothly. "I'm here for the event." "I'm on the guest list." The guard shook his head. "I'm afraid you're not on the list, sir. I've been instructed not to allow anyone without proper credentials." Musk's expression hardened. He wasn't the kind of person to be kept waiting, and certainly not by someone who didn't recognize him. He glanced around to see if any of the event organizers or other officials were nearby. None. He was alone with this guard, and he could tell that this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. "I think you don't understand," Musk said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Elon Musk, senior advisor to the President of the United States. I run the Department of Government Efficiency, and this event is partly my doing. I need to get inside." The guard remained unshaken. He seemed unaware of who Musk was, and that only added to the mounting frustration. The two stood in a tense silence as the sounds of the event echoed in the distance. Musk could hear the buzz of conversation, the distant hum of cameras, and the occasional laugh. The event was well underway, and here he was, stuck at the entrance. Musk, who had never been one to back down, took a deep breath. He reached for his phone and began typing a quick message to President Trump. He explained the situation, how he had been stopped at the gate despite being one of the key figures behind the event. He didn't expect a response right away, but the simple act of reaching out to the president was a move Musk knew could turn things around. Meanwhile, the security guard, who had been standing at attention, gave Musk a puzzled look. "I still can't let you in, sir. I don't have confirmation that you're supposed to be here." Musk was now beyond frustrated, but he could see the determination in the guard's eyes. This was no ordinary security guard. The guard wasn't acting out of malice or incompetence, he was simply following orders. And that made the situation even more absurd. Elon Musk, one of the most powerful men in the world, being stopped by a security guard who didn't even know who he was. Musk thought for a moment and then decided on a new course of action. Instead of trying to convince the guard of his identity, he pulled out his phone again and dialed the president's direct line. The phone rang and Musk's pulse quickened. He could hear the line click, followed by the deep, familiar voice of President Trump on the other end. "Hey, Elon," Trump said, clearly in a good mood. "What's up?" Musk didn't mince words. "I'm being held up by a security guard at the entrance to the event. They don't have me on the list and I can't get in." Trump paused for a moment, clearly surprised. "Wait, what? You're telling me they don't know who you are?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Musk replied, his voice tight with frustration. "Well, that's just ridiculous," Trump responded with a chuckle. "I'll take care of it. Give me a minute." Musk ended the call and looked at the security guard again, who was still standing firm in front of the gate. A few seconds passed and then Musk's phone buzzed. He looked down to see a message from Trump. "I've personally spoken to the event coordinator. You're good to go." Musk smiled and looked up at the guard. "You can let me in now," he said simply. The guard hesitated for a moment, then nodded and moved aside. As Musk's Tesla rolled past him, he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The event was just around the corner and he was finally going to make it. But what Musk didn't know was that this was only the beginning of what would become a legendary story. A story that would capture the imagination of Americans and leave everyone wondering what had truly transpired that day. Elon Musk made his way into the venue, his heart still racing from the unexpected delay. As his car passed through the gates, he saw a crowd of journalists, politicians, and tech moguls milling around. The event was in full swing, with discussions taking place in small groups, and a large stage set up at the center of the venue where speeches were to be made. Musk had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. His department, DOGE, had been working tirelessly to ensure that this initiative would streamline government processes, and he knew this was going to be his moment to shine. However, despite the relief of finally being inside, Musk couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling from the confrontation with the security guard. That small act of defiance had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Was the guard simply doing his job, or was something more at play here? What could have caused such a mix-up, especially with someone of his stature involved? He walked through the corridors of the venue, heading towards the main hall. As he entered, he could hear the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of glasses as people sipped on champagne and mingled. But something felt off. The room was abuzz, not just with excitement but with an undercurrent of tension. It was as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. Musk's gut told him that the day was not going to unfold as smoothly as he had hoped. He made his way to the front, where key figures were standing, including some of the top advisors to President Trump, a few senators, and tech executives from various companies. Musk nodded in their direction, acknowledging their presence. But before he could join the group, he was intercepted by one of the event coordinators, a young woman with a clipboard. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice laced with nervousness. "There seems to be a problem. We've just been informed that someone is upset about your late arrival." Musk frowned, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean? I'm here now. Everything's fine." The coordinator hesitated before continuing. "Well, it seems that a few of the other attendees, especially some of the senators, are not too happy that you weren't here on time. They're asking questions and there's talk of postponing your segment." Musk raised an eyebrow. "What? This is absurd. I'm not just some speaker here, I'm the one who helped organize this entire event. I've got the president's backing. There's no way they can just push me out like this." As he spoke, his phone buzzed once again. It was a message from President Trump. "I heard about the delay. Ignore the drama, Elon. You're the man of the hour. Go make them see your vision." Musk smiled at the message, but it did little to quell his rising frustration. The situation was spiraling out of control. He could feel the pressure mounting, and he knew that he had to act fast to regain the upper hand. "Let's go," he said, turning back to the coordinator. "I'm not backing down. I'm getting on that stage." The coordinator nodded and they began walking toward the stage area. But as they approached, they were intercepted by another figure, a tall, imposing man with a security earpiece and a stern expression. Musk didn't recognize him at first, but the man's presence was undeniable. He was someone important and his eyes were locked on Musk as though sizing him up. "Mr. Musk," the man said, his tone professional but firm. "I'm afraid you'll need to step aside for a moment." Musk stopped in his tracks. "I don't think you understand. I'm here to speak at this event. I've already been cleared." The man shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir, but the situation has changed. We've had to adjust the schedule and I'm afraid you'll need to wait for further instructions." Musk's patience was wearing thin. He had dealt with bureaucratic obstacles before, but this was starting to feel personal. He didn't have time for games. The event was meant to be a demonstration of how government could work efficiently, how things could be streamlined, but here he was, trapped in the same slow-moving machinery he had promised to overhaul. "Look," Musk said, his voice steady but with an edge, "I'm not some guest here. I'm the one who designed this entire initiative. The president himself is expecting me to speak. So, unless you're telling me that Trump doesn't want me here, I'm going up on that stage." The security officer didn't budge. "I understand, sir, but I've been given direct orders to prevent any disruptions." Musk stared at the man, feeling the weight of the moment. He could sense that this wasn't just a security issue anymore. Someone, perhaps more powerful than the guard, was trying to stop him. It was no longer about access, it was about control. Just then, Musk's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from Trump. It was from his assistant, who had been in constant contact with the White House, The message read, "Security has been briefed. Someone has orchestrated this delay. You're being targeted." Musk felt a chill run down his spine. Targeted? By whom? And why? He knew that something larger was at play. This wasn't just a case of being late. There were forces at work trying to undermine him, and he had to figure out who was behind it before it escalated further. "Let me through," Musk said, his tone now colder than before. "I'm not asking anymore." Musk's words hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, the security officer seemed to hesitate. The crowd around them had started to notice the standoff, and murmurs began to ripple through the room. Eyes were now on Elon Musk, the man who had been instrumental in creating the very initiative that was meant to transform the government's relationship with the tech industry. But there he was, being blocked by a security officer, his path to the stage halted by an invisible force that Musk could not yet see. The officer's grip tightened on his earpiece, and after a tense pause, he spoke. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't allow you past here without clearance." Musk's jaw clenched. He had been patient, perhaps too patient. The security guard's words were nothing more than an obstacle now. He had faced far more dangerous and complex challenges in his career, challenges that involved not just technology, but also political maneuvering, corporate battles, and even space exploration. But this felt different. It wasn't about rocket ships or electric cars. It wasn't about pushing the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. This was about control, and Musk was no stranger to that fight. He stepped forward, his presence undeniable. He had come to the event with the intention of using his platform to push forward his vision for a more efficient government. One that embraced innovation and the power of technology. He wasn't going to let some bureaucratic mix-up stop him now. "I don't think you understand," Musk said again, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "I am the senior advisor to the President of the United States. I run the Department of Government Efficiency, and this event is happening because of the work my team and I have put into it. This isn't negotiable." The security officer stood his ground, his expression unreadable. "Sir, I'm following orders." Musk's mind raced. Who was behind this? Who was orchestrating this little drama? This wasn't a mistake. Someone had decided that Musk would not speak at this event, and they were willing to go to great lengths to ensure that happened. Musk's phone buzzed once again. It was a message from his chief of staff, who had been keeping him informed of developments within the White House. The message read, "Elon, something's wrong. The opposition to the initiative is more organized than we thought. There are whispers of sabotage. Be careful." It was a warning, but Musk didn't need it. He already knew. The question now was who was behind this attempt to derail the event and why. Musk took a deep breath and addressed the security officer once more, this time with more authority. "Call your superior," he said firmly. "I'll wait right here until I get clearance." The officer, clearly caught in a difficult position, hesitated but then nodded and turned to make a call. As he spoke quietly into his earpiece, Musk watched the room around him. The murmurs had grown louder now. People were talking, and Musk could sense the confusion in the air. Many of them likely had no idea what was going on, but some of the more seasoned officials in the room were starting to connect the dots. They could see that Musk was being targeted, and they were curious as to who would be bold enough to try to stop him. A few minutes passed before the officer returned, his expression even more grim than before. "Mr. Musk," he said, "I've been instructed to escort you to the waiting area until further notice." Musk's frustration reached a boiling point. This was no longer about an event delay. This was about power. Someone, likely within the government, was pulling strings to keep him out of the equation. Musk's mind raced as he realized that the implications were far greater than just this one event. If someone could stop him here, at this event, then what else could they prevent? His entire vision for government reform and the DOGE initiative was at risk. This wasn't just about his ego, it was about the future of American governance and its potential to evolve into a more efficient, tech-savvy powerhouse. But what Musk didn't realize was that he wasn't the only one who had been tracking the developments. As the officer prepared to escort him away from the stage, a voice broke through the tension. "Elon, wait." Musk turned to see a familiar face stepping forward, a man he had seen many times before in the corridors of power. It was Jared Kushner, one of President Trump's closest advisors and a key figure in shaping the direction of the Trump administration's policies. Musk's eyes narrowed. Kushner was one of the few people who truly understood the breadth of the work Musk was doing within the administration, and he had often been a valuable ally. Kushner approached Musk with a sense of urgency, his eyes scanning the room, wary of anyone who might overhear. "I've been tracking the situation. It's worse than you think. Musk raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Kushner glanced toward the security officer who was still standing a few feet away. Someone in the administration wants to shut down the DOGE initiative. They're worried about what it could mean for their influence. They're trying to sabotage everything. And you're the primary target. Musk's jaw clenched. He had known that there were factions within the government who weren't thrilled with the idea of efficiency reform, but he hadn't realized it had escalated this far. Someone powerful was orchestrating a campaign against him, and now they were using the event to make their move. Kushner stepped closer, lowering his voice. You can't let them win, Elon. You've got to speak. You've got to show them that no one can stop this vision. Musk's eyes hardened with determination. I'm not backing down, he said, his voice resolute. Kushner nodded. Then let's take this to the next level. Musk felt a surge of adrenaline. He knew the next steps would be crucial. The stakes had never been higher, and his entire vision for reform was on the line. He was no longer just fighting for a government initiative. He was fighting for his place in the future of America and for the future of technological innovation in the public sector. But first, he needed to get past the security officer. He needed to be on that stage. And no one was going to stop him. Musk stood tall, his mind racing as he processed the enormity of what was at stake. The security officer, still standing rigidly in his place, was now caught between a rock and a hard place. His orders were clear: prevent Musk from entering the stage. But the weight of the situation, everything Musk had said, the backing he had from the highest echelons of power, was beginning to weigh on him. Kushner, sensing the moment of hesitation, took the opportunity to intervene. Mr. Musk, he began, turning to the officer, you should understand that not only is Elon Musk a senior advisor to the president, but he also has the backing of the entire administration on this. This initiative is critical to the future of this country, and any obstruction will not be tolerated. The security guard shifted uneasily under the weight of Kushner's words. His jaw tightened as he processed the situation. He clearly didn't want to escalate things further, but he was also caught between a rock and a hard place. Musk felt the tension rise in the air like a palpable force. It was no longer just about getting to the stage. It was about making a statement. He couldn't allow himself to be pushed around, not when so much was on the line. He had fought too hard to get here. The DOGE initiative wasn't just a pet project, it was his vision for revolutionizing how the government interacted with the private sector, how inefficiency could be rooted out from the highest levels of bureaucracy. With one last look at the officer, Musk took a step forward, his voice cold but unwavering. You can either let me through now, or you can explain to the president why I missed my speech. Kushner added, his voice low but piercing, we both know what that would mean. It's not just a missed speech, it's a failure to deliver on the most important initiative of this administration. There was a brief pause as the security guard scanned the room, looking for some sign of support. The tension between the two men was thick, almost suffocating. Musk could see the internal struggle playing out on the guard's face. The officer clearly understood the gravity of the situation now, but it was clear that he was trying to stay within the boundaries of his orders. Musk could feel the weight of that hesitation and knew it was time to act decisively. Finally, the officer's shoulders slumped. Fine, he muttered, barely audible. You can go through. But don't make a scene. Musk's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. He nodded once, acknowledging the officer's reluctant concession. It was a small victory, but one that would have a far-reaching impact. He turned to Kushner, his tone shifting to something more strategic. Let's move quickly. We don't have much time. The two men made their way to the stage where the event was in full swing. As they passed through the crowd, people who had been previously unaware of the tension now watched Musk with newfound attention. Whispers followed him like a shadow, but he paid them no mind. He was focused solely on the task at hand. They reached the front, and the moment Musk stepped into view, the murmurs among the attendees intensified. Cameras flashed, capturing the arrival of the man who had just been moments away from being denied access. Musk's presence was magnetic as always, and he knew how to command attention when it mattered most. He walked to the podium without hesitation, and the crowd went silent. The eyes of the room were fixed on him, the tension now palpable. He had no intention of letting this moment slip away. He wasn't just there to speak, he was there to remind everyone why he was in the position he was in and why the work of DOGE was so vital. He cleared his throat and tapped the microphone lightly, ensuring that it worked before speaking. His voice, when it came, was calm and measured, but with an underlying intensity that conveyed just how important this moment was. Ladies and gentlemen, Musk began, his eyes scanning the room, thank you for being here. You know who I am, and you know the work that I'm leading. What we're talking about today is more than just a simple government initiative. What we're discussing here is the future of America. We're talking about a government that isn't bogged down by inefficiency, by outdated systems, or by the sluggishness that has hindered progress for decades. His words were deliberate, calculated. He paused briefly, letting the room absorb his message. We've come to a point where innovation isn't just an option, it's a necessity. And the government has to adapt. If we continue to operate at the pace we've been operating, we will fall behind. If we continue to rely on outdated processes, we will be left in the dust. But if we embrace the future, if we leverage the power of technology and efficiency, we can change everything. The crowd was hanging on his every word now, and Musk could see the shift in their expressions. He wasn't just talking about a vision anymore. He was talking about a revolution, a change that could reshape the very fabric of government itself. I know that not everyone is on board with what we're doing. I know that some of you in this room are more comfortable with the old ways. But let me tell you something, the future is not optional. It's coming whether we like it or not. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, will we be ready? Will we be the ones leading the charge, or will we be left behind? Musk's voice grew stronger as he spoke, and the passion in his words was palpable. He had come to this event not just to deliver a speech, but to make an impact, to push his vision into the spotlight where it belonged. He paused, allowing the room to absorb the weight of his words before delivering the final punch. Make no mistake, he said, his voice steady and firm, this initiative is not just about efficiency. It's about taking back control of our future. And anyone who tries to stop it, anyone who tries to stand in our way will only delay the inevitable. We will not be stopped. And we will succeed. The room erupted into applause. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was the kind of applause that signified change, the kind of applause that signified support for a new way of thinking. Musk stepped back from the podium, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this was just the beginning. There were still battles to fight, still obstacles to overcome. But in that moment, he had made his point clear. Nothing, not even the most well-coordinated attempt to stop him, could stand in his way. The applause echoed in Musk's ears as he stepped back from the podium. He had done it, he had delivered his message with force and conviction. His words had cut through the tension like a hot knife through butter. But the battle wasn't over. This was just one victory in a much larger war. There were still enemies to face, and they weren't going to give up easily. The threat to the DOGE initiative wasn't going away. In fact, Musk suspected that the forces trying to sabotage him were just getting started. As he made his way back to his seat, Kushner followed closely behind, his face a mixture of admiration and concern. That was legendary, Kushner said, his voice laced with a sense of awe. You've just made your stand. But you need to be prepared for the backlash. Musk nodded, his expression hardening. He wasn't naive enough to believe this would all end with one speech. He knew the stakes. The opposition would regroup and they would come at him harder than before. They had already tried to block him from speaking at this event. Who knew what they would try next? But Musk wasn't one to back down from a fight. He had always been a disruptor, always pushing against the status quo. Whether it was in the private sector or within the government, he had always believed that change was inevitable and that he would be the one to lead it. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to let a few power-hungry bureaucrats stop him now. As he sat down, a group of key officials from the administration approached him, all eyes on him with a mix of admiration and respect. One of them, a senior policy advisor, spoke up. Elon, that was exactly what we needed. The president is going to be very pleased with your speech. But there are some concerns we need to address. The opposition isn't going to let this go. Musk looked up at the group, his gaze steady. I didn't expect them to, he replied. But it doesn't matter. We have a mission and we're not backing down. The future of this country is at stake. The advisor nodded, his expression grim. We know. But we need to be ready. We've already seen signs of organized pushback. And it's going to get more intense before it gets better. You'll have to navigate the political minefield carefully. Musk didn't flinch. He had faced far more dangerous situations in his career, from the skepticism of the auto industry when he introduced Tesla to the risk of failure when he launched SpaceX. He had always risen to the challenge, and he would do it again. I'm ready, Musk said, his voice unwavering. Let them come. We'll fight back harder. But as the meeting continued and the discussions turned to strategy, Musk's mind wandered briefly back to the moment just before he stepped onto the stage. The security guard. The hesitation. The internal struggle of someone caught between his duty and the realization that this was much bigger than a simple protocol issue. Musk realized something then. The resistance wasn't just coming from the outside. It was coming from within the system itself. The government, as large and bureaucratic as it was, had its own vested interests, many of which were threatened by the changes he was bringing. The DOGE initiative was a direct challenge to those who had built their power on inefficiency and red tape. And so, the war wasn't just about fighting external enemies, it was about fighting the very culture that had been ingrained in the system for decades. The opposition wasn't going to just give up. They were going to fight dirty. And Musk had to be ready for that. The following days saw an escalation in the political chess game. Musk's speech had drawn attention, both positive and negative, from all corners of the political spectrum. On one hand, there were those who hailed him as a visionary, someone who could finally bring about the change that the government so desperately needed. On the other hand, there were powerful figures who saw Musk's words as a direct threat to their authority, and they were ready to do whatever it took to stop him. Rumors began to swirl about attempts to discredit Musk, to undermine his credibility and reputation. Leaks surfaced in the media claiming that Musk's initiative was nothing more than a thinly veiled power grab designed to push a personal agenda. The opposition had begun to mobilize, and the fight for the future of the DOGE initiative had only just begun. But Musk was undeterred. In fact, the more they pushed, the more determined he became. He knew this was what it meant to fight for change. He had seen it before when Tesla was on the brink of bankruptcy and when SpaceX was struggling to get off the ground. He had learned that the bigger the opposition, the more important it was to stand firm and push forward. One night, as Musk sat in his office, surrounded by a sea of reports and proposals, his phone buzzed. It was a message from President Trump. "Great speech today, Elon. You've got the entire country talking. Now, we need to keep the momentum going. Let's meet tomorrow. Big things ahead." Musk smiled to himself. This was what he had been waiting for, the president himself reaching out. The meeting was an opportunity to strengthen the push for reform, to align their strategies and make sure that the DOGE initiative wasn't just a flash in the pan, but a lasting legacy. As he sat back in his chair, reflecting on the events of the past few days, Musk realized that this moment, the one that had begun with a simple security guard blocking his path, had now become the stuff of legend. It was the start of a new chapter, one where Musk wasn't just a disruptor in the private sector, but a force to be reckoned with in the halls of power. He had been stopped once, but he would never be stopped again. And so, the story of Elon Musk's battle for the future of government efficiency had only just begun. With the forces of resistance gathering on one side, and a determined Musk leading the charge on the other, the fight for change would become a defining moment in American history. The legacy of that one moment, when a security guard tried to stop a man who had already changed the world, would be remembered for years to come. It was a testament to the power of vision, of persistence, and of the unshakable belief that nothing, not even the most powerful forces, could stand in the way of progress. And so, the legend of that day would be told for generations, of how a simple act of defiance led to the birth of a new era in government reform, and how, in the end, Elon Musk had proved that nothing was more unstoppable than the pursuit of a better future.